Accounts Committee. We will actually have a ordinance before us on Tuesday on this subject. And this is of particular interest to me as it pertains to how we make sure that we count all of our populations. We'll go ahead and, because of time, there's a lot to talk about. Go ahead, turn it over. Who's going first? All right, go ahead. Oh, sorry. My apologies. We're going to have to do introductions. Starting with Mr. Weddleton.
John Weddleton.
P. Peterson.
Cameron Perez-Video.
Meg Zalatow.
Forrest Dunbar.
Felix Rivera.
Good afternoon. I'm Charmaine Ramos. I'm Tribal Partnership Specialist for the U.S. Census. This is my second census that I'm working. In 2010, I worked as the manager for recruiting as well as field operations. My presentation will be in two parts, information and what to do next. As your chairman said today, you've already started to do the next steps. The first count in the nation will be in Tooksip Bay. The target date is January 23rd. As you can see, the type of enumeration or the way we count individuals is unique. All of Alaska, almost, is green. That means that it's paper-based. We will go to those 200 villages and work with the residents there and count and have them fill out the papers. Whereas the lower 48, 95% of the individuals will fill out their questionnaire online. This is what the test questionnaire looked like in 2018. We tested it on the East Coast. One of the things that number 9 is talking about race and ethnicity. There's the checkbox for white, African American, Black, Alaska Native American Indian. On the American Indian Alaska Native, it asks for the information on your enrolled tribe. If I didn't enroll my adult daughter, then she can just go ahead and put the information that tribal information for how I'm enrolled. And the reason why I bring this up is because in the Anchorage School District, there's 90 different languages spoken, and so this starts to represent the community on how they fill it out. These are the different languages. There's going to be 12 non-English languages. We will have flashcards up to 59 languages. Spanish will be used on our instruments that we're collecting the information from in Anchorage. This date has just been changed. I just got a verbal information that is now going to be changed to March 12th. So what happens is that almost every citizen in the United States will receive an invitation to participate in the 2020 census. That invitation will be delivered either by a postal worker or a census worker. Then, within the next couple of weeks, the online access to the questionnaire will open. If an individual does not want to go online and fill out his or her application, they can actually call it in. As part of the invitation, they'll get a unique identifier number, and when they call in, they give that information to the census employee so that then we can verify that information and then help this citizen fill out their questionnaire. The paper form, of course, is for most of rural Alaska, although individuals, if they want to, they can use the form, but we're trying to go by internet and by phone. This is because we know that the term Anchorage is the largest village. We have individuals from rural Alaska coming in and out. And there's a large Alaskan Native population. So I am sharing this, that for the 200 plus villages, Since they don't have internet access or reliable internet access, we're working with the federally recognized tribes for referrals. And so they ask individuals in the town if they want to work for us, and then they send the information into the Los Angeles office.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. I might be getting a little ahead, but I was noticing that you're mentioning under rural Alaska visits, you're talking about fingerprinting for
Yes.
background checks?
Yes.
You're doing background checks when
Yeah.
you're counting?
No, for the takers.
Oh, you're for the
For census, for
census
individ-
workers?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And
All right.
that would be statewide.
Okay, thank you.
So for rural Alaska, we have to do it paper-based. For Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau, they can do it online, they can apply online. And then when we hire them and they come in for training, that's when we'll do the fingerprinting. That's the current plan.
Okay.
In the villages, we will fly out to the villages and do the training in the villages. Here in Anchorage, we'll do that here at the Anchorage Census office. And I was looking for the manager for the census office. I don't think he made it. So this is the information that an individual here in Anchorage can go online and fill out the application. We're currently recruiting here in Anchorage, so if there's a way that the mayor's office and or the assembly can get out the information about census jobs, that would be helpful. When we're working with tribal organizations, we request a point of contact or a tribal liaison so that we can, one, tell them about the jobs, two, coordinate with them when we're going to be visiting their communities, and three, for the background checks, three, when we actually go out and to do the count.
And actually, I have a question. So, the last slide you had points to the importance of hiring folks from their communities. So could you talk a little bit about the strategy for hiring folks, particularly in Anchorage, from our different ethnic communities?
Yes, so the census, we'll go back to the language. We're going to have information, recruiting information in various languages. The Spanish is already rolled out. They're looking at Chinese, Korean. There's one more language that's going to be rolling out shortly here, so the recruiting will be done in different languages. The census employees will have 26 recruiting assistants and 7 partnership specialists in the state. Their job is to go out and identify these different groups and start working with them. And I've already met with the American Korean, is it Korean American or American Korean community here in Anchorage. We've already started contacting the Filipino community, so we're going now that I'm getting more help, that's how we're going to roll it out. Different community activities. The parade, the Pride Parade would be one of the ones that we would identify as a group or an event that we can be at representing the census and say, there's jobs available. There's part of the training that is with the Complete Count Committee. We'll show more about how we'll do outreach.
Thank you.
The Complete Count Committee, that's my next presentation, so I won't go into it. We are beginning to build resources. The 2020 Census website has been kicked off. There was a soft opening, so I included this here. A person can get emails, updates on the 2020 census. They can apply online for a job here in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. The other one that I was just told about is 4acre, has information on the 2020 census. So I will be, as these resources roll out, I will put that as part of my presentation. The state has information also, and so I'll be adding that to my slide. This is my information, contact information. And so the real reason why I'm here is to talk about the Complete Count Committee. You guys call it a Complete Count Commission. And so this is the foundation of that. And so when you're looking at your resolution on Tuesday, this is why you're actually having a Complete Count Commission. Per our knowledge and experience from the Census Bureau, if that makes sense. Any other questions on just the overview of the 2020 census? Yes, sir.
Mr. Wells.
Oh,
You'll probably hit it, maybe not, but what day will we have the count?
so in Anchorage,
I mean,
So-
when you have the result, I want to know how many people live in Anchorage. I'll know
the report goes to the president December 31st, 2020. The governors receive it at the end of March, and that's approximately when preliminary data will be given to the public also.
March 2021.
2021, yes.
And it's preliminary, so people can go change it?
There is a process for requesting changes to the data, and I'm not familiar with it, but I'm sure that if that's something that you're really interested in, I can find out more about it.
No.
There is a process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. All right. I don't see any more questions.
I apologize. I'm used to having to do everything.
You could.
So when you're looking at a complete count committee, the reason why you have a complete count committee is that's another layer to get the information out, as well as motivate individuals in your districts and the municipality to fill out their questionnaire. You're the trusted voices. I feel a little rushed. So what you want to do for the Complete Count Committee is try to be as inclusive as possible. That goes back to the chairman's question on how are you going to do outreach. Well, one of the ways you do outreach is having the right people, right organizations that is represented on the Complete Count Committee. Does that make sense? And so when we're looking at the Complete Count Committee, you were talking about governments, media, whether it's radio or television or newspapers, workforce development / education. In rural Alaska, sometimes they're very close. Workforce development, businesses. It could be any sort of business that you think that could assist in getting the word out about the 2020 census, as well as a recognized voice in the community. Education. Well, that would be obvious in Anchorage. That would be University of Alaska, APU, Anchorage School District. Anchorage School District, we're having a program called Statistics in the Schools that kicks off in September. One of the things that the census has learned is that you have children that are taught about the importance about the census. They go home and they make sure that they tell their parents or their guardians that they should fill out the questionnaire. So that kicks out in September. Community organizations. Community organizations would be here like the social services. When I was practicing my presentation, I had more than one organization. Faith-based. In 2010, as the manager for recruiting, my recruiters went to churches and they set up tables after services, and while everybody else was setting up and visiting and networking with each other, the recruiting assistant was there. So that would be one way. The other thing is that they have their church bulletin, so they can add something about the 2020 census. Of course, it's required by the U.S. Constitution every 10 years. You can see from this bottom one that $675 billion was distributed in federal funds in FY 2016. That's and $2 billion came to Alaska. That's approximately $3,000 per person times 10, and that's $30,000 if you miss one person. That's how important that one person is when you're looking at programs and services. It just kind of adds up. Oh, and one of the things that I forgot to mention is that on the questionnaire that we saw in the first presentation, the citizenship question has gone to the Supreme Court. That hopefully a decision will be made and shared with the public around the end of June. Then Congress can decide what they're going to do about the questionnaire. They're the ones that have to review and approve it. So when you're looking at forming a complete count committee, you have to remember that in the back of your mind, because I'm going around the state and talking about the 2020 census. It pops up, that question, that people are fearing to fill out the questionnaire. And that would be a problem here in Anchorage when you're looking at how diverse it is. So that might be just a little bit more work for the municipality to make sure that they reach out to those individuals that are scared.
To add on that just a little bit, the Alaska Center has done some significant work to better understand the citizenship question, and they have sort of a graph that says, if you answer the citizenship question, what happens? If you don't answer it, what happens? And that might be useful information for you, sure.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure that we tap it. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to introduce Donna Bach. Her first week as a partnership specialist was last week, so she's observing and taking notes for me. And she'll be the second person that's working here in Anchorage. We'll have a third person coming on with the next 2 or 3 months.
Oh, we have a whole presentation, so we'll do that.
Okay. And this goes to the citizenship question. One of the things that the census is emphasizing is the confidentiality and the security of the information. My presentation last night to the Northeast Community Council, my presentation talked about how we can be imprisoned up to 5 years if we release the information and fine $250,000. The next level is the Census Bureau releases the data to the public, so they don't provide the information on an individual or the household. Key points about the structure of the complete count commission that the Anchorage is forming is that it should be really inclusive. It should represent various races, ethnicities, cultural and geographic considerations. So one of the things, if we get to it, is there's a map that the census has created, and you can look at the census tracts throughout Anchorage. And if there's a thing called low response rate, and the higher that number is, the more difficult it is to count in that area. And if we get to that, I'll show you that. Otherwise, I can present it to the complete count committee. Partnerships specialists are the liaisons to the complete count committees. We're the ones that provides the information and the resources. Normally, a complete count committee is chaired by the highest formed and chaired by the highest elected official. And that could be from someone from the mayor's office, whether that's the current mayor or a former mayor, as well as the assembly, with today's assembly or a former assembly member. When you're looking at the makeup, you need to look at education, health, businesses, organizations. Even I can't read this. And you can find that information here in the training manual. Everyone that on the assembly, and there's extras in the back for individuals. You can see the makeup of the recommended complete count committee. There's 5 phases. Currently, we're on the education phase, so we're telling as many governments, stakeholders, and partners as possible about the census and the formation of a complete count committee. We are starting to ask stakeholders and partners to create information on their website to talk about the 2020 census. Motivation stage. If you're in rural Alaska, that starts December and is kicking off in January because, as I said, the first place in the nation is Tooksuk Bay, and they start in January. The rest of the nation doesn't start until March, so that's their motivation stage when you're looking at this. The reminder, May, June, and July. Hurry up and fill this out, and then thank you is July of 2020. There's a work plan, and that I can provide to the complete count committee just as a recommendation. It includes the phases, 5 phases that I just spoke of. It provides questions on what you think you want to emphasize in Anchorage, whether it's the race, diversity, ethnicity. If you in your district want more representation on the complete count committee, or for it to be addressed by the complete count committee using the interactive map, then that's part of how you pull together a complete count committee. LA and the city of LA have already formed theirs. They, as part of their complete count committee, have already set their meetings every single month through the April or May of 2020. So it's just going to be standard, no matter what. Part of this is activities that you would identify, municipal-wide activities that you can attend and be present at. So when you're looking at this, you're looking at the complete count committees looking at 2 things. So you're looking at geographic areas, Mountain View, Government Hill, Fairview. Those are areas that have high, low response rates. The other thing you're looking at is race and ethnicity. So those are the individuals that are represented here in Anchorage that may speak one of the 90+ languages. And this we can go into when you have a complete count committee form. This is the website. I was going to share that today, but I won't in order to give 4Acre and the Housing Authority time. I didn't know they needed 20 minutes. So that is a quick overview of a complete count committee. I think when you're looking at your resolution, now that you've heard a broad view of what a complete count committee's purpose is and who should be represented on that committee, that's something to look at on the resolution.
So if we have general broad questions, we should probably direct them to you, and specific questions to you guys about our complete count committee. Okay, so then I guess general broad question for you is, where in other jurisdictions, where do they get funding for this? Because I imagine that this takes money. Does it mainly come from federal funding, or does it come from other sources?
Right now, the Census Group Census Bureau doesn't have funding for this. One of the things that organizations are looking at is that when they buddy up, they try to buddy up with other businesses or organizations that can help them be able to fund different activities. So, for instance, in Tanana Chiefs, in Fairbanks area for the Tanana Chiefs Conference, they're providing the support for the federally recognized tribes, and Doyon, the regional corporation, will provide the funding to conduct certain activities, but not all.
So any general questions for Charmaine?
So the way this is that the U.S. Census will provide the broad information and provide the broad support. So for instance, this is something that we created and it's used across the nation. The second thing that we will start rolling out, and you have a flyer in your handout, and it's going to be Alaska Native and American specific. The third thing, what I see, is that 4 Acres can provide Alaska specific information. They're looking, last time I attended their meeting, they're looking at creating information in Alaska Native languages. But if you're looking at broad languages, you would come back to the census. Does that make sense? So it depends on the topic, on where you would go for specific information. Yes?
Yes, Mr. Dunbar.
I had a question. So I'm wondering if there's something that you concern yourself with, or if another group does. That is, you brought up Alaska Native folks. And I know when I was working on PFD-AVR, automatic voter registration, there was this issue where a lot of Alaska Native folks were living in Anchorage, but wanted to maintain their voter registration out in the village of origin. And so I'm curious about, when you're counting folks, how do you address that kind of, they are physically living almost the entire year here, but they want to maintain that connection to the village. And of course, from our perspective as policymakers in Anchorage, that could sort of pervert things when it comes to redistricting. So how do you deal with that kind of level of specificity, or someone else?
No, that is, thank you for the question. That the criteria for the U.S. Census is where they spend most of their time.
Okay.
So for instance, if an individual graduates from high school in Fort Yukon, and he or she comes to Anchorage and lives here that's not a good example. Wait, let me think. I'm trying to think of an example, but so if a person lives in Fort Yukon and then they move to Anchorage for 9 months, then he or she will be counted in Anchorage.
Okay.
The criteria is, where do you spend the most of your time?
Okay.
And if it's Anchorage, then that's where he or she's counted.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
Dunbar.
And so the area census officer will provide that training to the field supervisors, who will make sure that the census questionnaire is filled out correctly.
Thank you. Ms. Alatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This actually follows up on your question with regard to the funding. If we put in municipal code the creation of a new commission, the AM says there's no expected economic impact, but I guess maybe this is for the administration. Kind of the presentation suggested that perhaps it's the mayor or the designee that's kind of at the top of this commission or the complete count committee. If there's no money, where is it going to go? Why would we be putting it into ordinance then? I guess I'm a little bit confused on the process. So if anyone can talk about the process of putting it into code when we're not putting any resources behind it. I mean, do we typically fund our commissions? I have no idea.
Jason Bachman said, Deputy Chief Staff of the Mayor. Typically, no. There are a few boards and commissions. The one that I can think of off the top of my head that does have some money attached to it. I think it's actually privately fundraised, is the Sister Cities Commission. But for the most part, many of the commissions, they're all done on a volunteer basis. Typically, there is a staffer that is assigned to it, depending on which department has kind of jurisdiction over the commission. But other than that, no, this is all done on a volunteer basis and just part of the daily workload of the municipal employee that's assigned to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That reminds me, so October of 2016 to October of 2018, I worked Alaska, Washington, Idaho, and Oregon on the 2020 census. What the state of Oregon decided to do is that they're going to have 2 complete count committees. One was going to be internal, so that the staff and the departments that work for the state of Oregon can do the low-hanging fruit on their utility bills. They can say, here comes the 2020 census. The second level was what I presented here today is a complete count committee. And those are the trusted voices of the community that basically can get the word out about the 2020 census and then make sure that the staff is aware of any sort of activities that are in the community that there should be a presence to get the word out about the 2020 census.
And Mr. Gates, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I had some questions as well. As Ms. Salatal mentioned the costs of staffing a rural commission. And in the past, we had something we were proposing a commission, and said, well, that's significant staffing, resources, and time, and so forth. And now we have this one, we say, well, no, it's not. But I think that when you put it in code and you are required to do all these functions and you either probably the goals and objectives spelled out, it's great. But I think that is a real economic effect. Needs a little more explanation of which departments going to staff this commission, how many meetings are going to be something, at least a little more explanation why there's zero economic effect, or at least I should say $30,000 for for those who haven't, because that's the threshold for requiring some economic effects. And then I also wondered, I have a few other concerns about this, just legally how it's written and will be implemented. I wonder if this needs to be passed this Tuesday, or can I bring my concerns to the authors at the law department and see if we need to do legal revising before this passes and put it off one meeting? Would that be a problem in terms of timing?
So, do you guys have any thoughts on timing-wise?
From the U.S. Census perspective, just of course the sooner the better. I haven't seen this resolution. I was not included in the formation of it, so I'm not quite sure what's in it. But from the census point of view, if it's passed next week or the week after, to make the assembly and the leadership comfortable with the language, then from the census point of view, we don't see that as an obstacle.
Great. Then, yeah, I guess, Mr. Gates, if you have any concerns, bring them to Department of Law. And if you can't get them addressed by Tuesday, just let me know, and we can push it if we need to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Weddleton, yes.
Just a quick one, maybe. Okay, so we're looking at this thing right now, and you may fix it up. I'm just curious on B, that this commission will consist of a bunch of people and a state representative or senator. I mean, we have no authority to tell them they're going to do that. That makes, I mean, sure it'd be nice to have them, but it seems odd for us to say we shall.
Sure. So I'm curious if someone, whether that's, I don't know if that's you, Shannon, or if someone could walk through sort of these different parts and why they were written as such. Go ahead. All right, Shannon, go ahead.
So, my name is Shannon Kuhn. I'm with the Cambridge Health Department, and I've been serving as the point person for the muni on the census. And so, the thought with putting, and I can't speak to the legal language, but the thought on the representation is that having both an assembly member and a state representative would just allow a better perspective, especially if we could have that bipartisan perspective.
And I would just add, Assemblymember Wilson, we have actually had conversations with a couple of state representatives and senators, and they are interested in serving on this committee. So I don't think it would be an issue with getting one of them to agree to serve.
Yes, Ms.
As part of the outreach by the U.S. Census, we are meeting with all of our state legislators. We're more than halfway done. There is a resolution at the state level, and maybe you can provide an update more than I can. But it went through the House and the Senate and the combined committee. And so there is support by the state legislators. So if that's how Anchorage Assembly and the Mayor's Office wants to form the Complete Count Commission, and there's interest and support from the state legislators, the U.S. Census Bureau doesn't see that as an obstacle.
Mr. Weddleton, did you have anything more? I want to make sure we give time.
No, that's fine. I just think if it says we shall do this and we have no authority to tell them, I mean, I'm sure we'd get someone, but it just seems a little cheeky.
All right. Well, then let's be cheeky. All right, go ahead. We'll go ahead. Thank you so much, Charmaine. And we'll go ahead and turn it over. Mr. Yates, do you have something?
I was going to mention that related to Mr. Waterton's concerns, we have in Title IV a process for appointing members of an official commission. The mayor appoints, the Assembly confirms, and there's qualifications such as being residents, and so forth. So others who meet that. And I don't think for anybody to be in a commission, but Jason mentioned they're really able and they're appointed. But I will work with the Department of Law on some parts of B that I have some thoughts about in terms of improving that language.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll go fast. Okay, so I'm going to put a new hat on. I've already been with some of you today, so I'll just restart from the beginning. For the record, my name is Lori Wolf. I'm the president and CEO of the Foraker Group, which serves as the State Nonprofit Association for Alaska and the Nonprofit Capacity Building Organization for nonprofits and tribes across Alaska. And essential to our work is to give voice to nonpartisan public policy issues that affect Alaska's nonprofit sector. And our sector directly employs more than 44,000 people across the state. So part of that work that nonprofits, governments, and the private sector, both big and small, new and mature, rely on census data to do their work. And we only get one chance every 10 years to get this right. So that's why I am honored to wear the hat I am wearing today to have this conversation with you. We're often asked why lead a group of concerned Alaskan organizations on this issue, and what we say is we have 3.2 billion reasons why the census matters to Alaskans. This is the amount of funding currently received by our state from the federal government, and this allocation is determined by the census. I'm sure you would agree that we want Alaska to receive its fair share, and we know that a healthy economy relies on accurate data. We get one chance every 10 years to get this right. These two factors, federal dollars and good data on our state, have a deep impact on every Alaskan and give us a strong incentive to get that count right. That said, there are a number of challenges that face us more in 2020 than ever before. Gabe will get into more of the details, but I'll give you the high points here. The short list: the federal government has made fewer resources available than we believe are needed for an accurate count to take place in Alaska. There are fewer staff on the ground, although we are grateful for the staff that are here and the staff that will be hired. The Census Bureau's outreach is lagging far behind the timeline we think is necessary to build awareness of the census and to encourage Alaskans to participate. That timeline that you saw is really built for the lower 48, and so we are well running behind. And then this is especially true since they are still building the communication build out for the country and the lack of funding that is available at the federal level. There's things that have been shown to increase the count and that were proven to be that were shown in 2010. They weren't done, but we knew they've been shown to have a good impact, and we would like to see those done in 2020. So, for example, there will be no outreach to Alaskans whose only address is a post office box to alert the people that the census is coming and to encourage their participation. We see this as a true trust-building opportunity, and this again was studied in 2010 as an important step that was missed due to funding and will be again missed in 2020. There are no federal dollars, just as in 2010, set aside for translation of census materials into all of our Alaska Native languages. There is and it will only be translated formally into 12 languages. There's a much greater expectation that Alaskans will be able to respond online. And while many people can do that in our urban centers, we know that many more do not have that kind of connectivity or even access to the internet. We do appreciate the headway that the census is making with hiring, again, census workers on the ground. There's a commitment to hire a census worker in every Alaska Native village to do a paper count, and we are absolutely appreciative of that. But that still leaves all or more of our urban places with a mostly internet-based process. So we are concerned, and we think that we will be joined in seem to have been joined in our concern by government and private industry all across the state. Businesses, tribes, government at every level rely on the census. I often think of the census a little bit like toothpaste. We all use it, but none of us are really sure how it's made or where it comes from. The census data is a lot like toothpaste. Like, it impacts every aspect of our lives, but we rarely think about it. We just get up in the morning and use it, right? So that's true. This census data determines our roads. It helps us know our schools. It helps us determine grocery stores. Every decision you're all making is all impacted by census data. And again, that data is only collected once every 10 years. And so for all of those reasons, this is why almost 2 years ago now, Foraker convened the Alaska Census Working Group with the intention of advocating for a fair and accurate count for Alaskans in the 2020 census. This is a nonpartisan, multi-sector collaboration with representation from business, local, state, and federal government, nonprofits, Alaska Native organizations, the University of Alaska, and many others. We have been influential in building awareness among policymakers. We talked for the first year or so, we focused on what we called an air game. We're primarily flying back and forth to Washington, D.C., talking with the U.S. Census Bureau and our policymakers about funding the census at the federal level. And we have since turned our attention to what we're calling this ground game, this grassroots game of really working on getting out the count now and seeing real funding happen for Alaska. And so we have really begun to ramp up all of our outreach areas. It's important to point out that our primary motivation at the Census Working Group is the accuracy of the count and making sure that every Alaskan is counted. We're not focused on how the data will be used once the count is complete, beyond ensuring that Alaska's data is used to ensure correct federal dollars and decisions flow to Alaska. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about this important and accurate count. And I will just also address that the note here about funding. One of the things that we have been able to do is bring some private resources into Alaska around funding the census. There's a collaborative of national private funders who have articulated states that are particularly hard to count, Alaska being one of them. We have been in close contact with them, and we have received some funding to spearhead a little bit of this project, but it nowhere comes close to the budget that we think is necessary to ensure that every Alaskan is counted. So our work is simply complementary and supplementary to any other work that would happen at the state or the local level. As you heard, the first count will be in the U.S. will be in Tooksuk Bay. This was an exciting moment here in Anchorage when they announced it on the stage at AFN. And it's exciting, but it means that we have a lot of work ahead of us in a very short amount of time. So the working group has some pretty concrete goals. Our goal is to create a hub for communication and to be really in service to the local complete count committees and any grassroots organizing that happens. And there's a handful of members of the working group here in the audience today. We do want to focus on translation of materials into Alaska Native languages. We want to provide a mini grant program to incentivize local action, and we want to build trust by doing the P.O. Box mailing to P.O. boxes across Alaska. Conservatively, we think although this effort will take somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000, and we are doing our best to try to organize and rally those resources as private nonprofits, hopefully with support at the state and local level. In other states, this effort has been celebrated and led by the state, and that is not our situation.
If I can clarify really quickly. So $600,000 to $800,000.
Just for the things that I mentioned, just for translation, the P.O. Box mailing, to be a hub website and hub for communication.
Got it. Thank you.
That's just a little moment in the larger count. And so, as I said, in other states, this has been mobilized by the state themselves, and we've seen just tremendous efforts being done by California and Michigan, and that is just not what's happening here in Alaska. And so we have tried to rally and raise our voices as much as we can. We've made some headway, and we are also been visiting with all of the legislators, and we've been able to help pass a resolution just last Saturday. And so we're making some effort, but there's no money attached to any of those efforts, but we're happy to hear that at least it's on people's radars. So Gabe's gonna quickly just talk a little bit more about the threats that we face, and then I'll wrap up with this about it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabe Lehman. By day, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Cook Inlet Housing, and also by day, I chair the Alaska Census Working Group. So as Lori mentioned, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the barriers that are going to make it difficult to get a complete count in 2020 in Anchorage and throughout Alaska, to help reinforce the need for us to take action and not wait for the Census Bureau to do this work for us. Outreach is going to be critical. Alaska is one of the hardest, you know what, I'm going to go out on a ledge here to say it is the hardest state to count in the Union for a variety of reasons. Some of those reasons are familiar to all of us. Geography, we understand the geographical challenges of remote Alaska. We understand the challenges of dealing with populations that do not speak English as a first language, in particular when outreach and education materials will not be translated for those populations. Some of the challenges are new and different. This will be the first census in which internet self-response will be the primary means of response for a significant portion of the population. And that's not just a rural Alaska or a remote Alaska issue as it's often been characterized. There are a substantial number of families right here in Anchorage that simply do not have regular and consistent access to the internet. There are serious barriers to connectivity. The good news is that this coalition, the Alaska Census Working Group, that Lori has talked to you about, has identified many of those barriers and has begun developing a pretty comprehensive strategy for how we clear some of those hurdles. Hard to count populations include all of these populations that you see here. These are the people that are frequently missed. These are the people that we don't count. And often, these are the people that the federal government is trying to reach when it allocates resources on the basis of census data, right? So you saw this big map back here. I'll go back a little bit. You saw this big map of Alaska. What this shows you is hard to count geographies throughout the state of Alaska. If you see a color, yellow, orange, red, that means the response to the census in that area was in the bottom fifth compared to the rest of the country, or worse. Where you see these diagonal lines, those are areas that are so difficult to count that the Census Bureau has to use an entirely different methodology that is unique to remote Alaska. That can be viewed as an even deeper shade of red. So let's talk about what that means at the municipal level. You received this handout, and this shows you hard-to-count census tracts right here in the municipality of Anchorage. Again, every time you see a color, that means that tract was in the bottom fifth in terms of overall response, making it hard to count and meaning that there was likely an undercount for that community. When that happens in Alaska, it doesn't matter if that undercounted tract is in the municipality of Anchorage or if it's in Utqiagvik. It affects us all because often that data is aggregated and the money that flows in is an allocation for the whole state that is then parsed out among communities. So when there is an undercount in remote Alaska, it can absolutely affect Anchorage. And when there's an undercount in Anchorage, obviously it affects us here, but it also affects people in remote Alaska. We all sink or swim together on this one. Some just quick information about the municipality you folks can read, but I mean, look, this is a community in which, unfortunately, about a third of our population did not respond to the census the last go round. That's unacceptable and we need to change it. I'm going to try my best to translate what that means for us in terms of dollars. And we don't have great data on this, so it requires some extrapolation and a little bit of generalization. We have traditionally kind of geared this presentation to more remote Alaska, the areas of the state that had that diagonal, right, that special count. But here's a good example. We know that those remote areas of the state were undercounted by about 8% in 2010. That's huge. We know that about almost 5% of American Indian and Alaska Native persons on tribal lands, trust lands, reservations were undercounted. If you look at that 8% figure and you realize that on average, one undercounted Alaska Native or American Indian individual leads to a $3,000 per year reduction in federal resources, then you multiply that by the 10-year period for which that census data applies, you're talking about a loss of roughly $30,000 per person over the course of the life of that census data. If this undercount is just 2 or 3% in Anchorage, then we're still losing a substantial amount of the federal resources to which this community is entitled.
I have a question for Mr. Dunn.
Yeah, this might be a silly question. How do we know it's 8%? I mean, if they are using the best methodology to get a very complete count, how do we know that they missed 8%? And if we know they missed 8%, why don't we give them that data and be like, hey, here you go?
No, that's a great question, right? I work for a housing authority. This was never where I saw my expertise growing. The shortest version that I can give you, it all seemed like black magic to me too. The Census Bureau has a very detailed methodology that it uses for post-enumeration follow-up, that by using smaller sample sizes and reevaluating the data in certain ways, they can then figure out who they missed for smaller populations and then extrapolate that out.
Right, and I mean that's, yeah,
But
I love statistics. So why don't, if they are going to do that extrapolation, then presumably their final result would reflect that 8%.
Yeah, my understanding, and I would defer to Charmaine on this if she has a better answer, but my understanding is that constitutionally, because that data has to flow from the actual census itself, they cannot use the post-enumeration follow-up studies.
Oh, that's interesting.
Charmaine, do you have?
I'm surprised that our founding fathers put that in the Constitution.
Yeah,
you cannot use statistical analysis to do extrapolation. I'm surprised that's in there.
I can't give you a better answer. That's not our forte.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do apologize, but if we could wrap up.
Sure, absolutely. So all of these next two slides basically just address how this work is done in Anchorage. What we've heard at the state level is legislators saying, how hard is it to get this information? I go door to door when I'm campaigning. People talk to me, it's not that hard. Two responses to that. First, that's not how the census will be done in Anchorage, right? It's internet self-response, and if folks don't respond that way, there's other follow-up, but it is not in-person follow-up. Second, there's a very different response, even in those communities in which census takers are going door to door. It's one thing if they're talking to someone who is running for office and wants to engage with them in a conversation. It's another when it's a quote-unquote representative of the federal government who wants to know who's living in the household and all the detailed information about them. Lori, do you want to maybe
Yeah,
wrap
so
up?
can I just give you like 4 things to take away from all this? So first and foremost, we need your help in building trust. This is a trust-based process, and so there's no cost to building trust. We need you to communicate it. Every time you're in a group of more than 3 people with your constituents, we need you to talk about the 2020 census. We need you to talk about that it's a trustworthy process. We need you to encourage people to participate. We need you to put it in your tagline, in your email, and in your newsletters, and we need your help in building trust. We need you to mobilize this complete count committee or commission, whether it's next meeting or the meeting after that. We need you to mobilize that group of people, and so that they can begin their work, and so that they can connect with all the other CCCs that are happening all over the state. We need you to use our resources as soon as they're available, and the resources of the U.S. Census Bureau. This doesn't have to be something you start from scratch. There's lots of resources in your toolbox. We just want you to pick them up and use them. And if you want to be bold, you could advocate for appropriate funding at the state level, at the federal level, and even at the local level to fund this work. We are doing our best as volunteers to mobilize around the funding of this work, but we are a drop in the bucket compared to what really needs to happen. So if you wanted to get excited and mobilize around funding, we would not be sad about that. We'd be pretty excited about that. The short answer is we're here to be helpful. We're here as a supplement and a complement to the work that you're doing, but by no means can we supplant the larger effort and the role that government needs to play in this effort. This is a constitutionally mandated activity. It needs to flow from one government to the next, and we're just all here to be helpful.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So we'll close this work session, and
Like 2 minutes?
we'll give our